Hi, thank you for joining us. CBS News has learned that the U.S. is planning to host diplomatic talks in Washington next week between Israel and Lebanon. This comes following confusion over whether Lebanon was included in the ceasefire agreement between Iran and the U.S. and Israel. Iran and Pakistan, which brokered the deal and will be hosting Vice President J.D. Vance and U.S. negotiators for in-person peace talks this weekend, said the deal did extend to Lebanon. The U.S. and Israel disagree. More than 200 people were killed by Israeli airstrikes in Beirut Wednesday, one of the deadliest days of the conflict since the war with Iran began. Iran's parliament speaker warned today that continued attacks on Hezbollah, the proxy group in Lebanon, would bring, quote, explicit costs and strong responses. There's also confusion tonight over the status of the Strait of Hormuz. Traffic through the strait has remained mostly unchanged since the ceasefire went into place, despite its reopening being a key U.S. condition of the agreement. You're looking at a time lapse of vessel traffic from over the past 2 days. Data shows an average of 11 vessels are passing through every day. Before the war, that number was typically more than 100. CBS News political reporter Zach Hudak joins me now. Zach, what more do we know about these potential talks between Israel and Lebanon and what it might mean for the ceasefire?
Lindsay, we know that these talks are crucial for maintaining the ceasefire. There seems to have been, as you described, a bit of a game of telephone that went on as these various sides negotiated. Our reporting indicates that President Trump had been told when he gave that 2-week ceasefire notice on Tuesday, he'd been told that that included the entire region. So it included Lebanon and Israel's fighting with Lebanon. After he spoke the other day, though, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he came out of that meeting with a different outlook, that was not included, and it really only affected the areas in which the U.S. was involved. So now we have Iran effectively saying, that's not what we agreed to, and President Trump is saying, that's not what we agreed to. So this is really an integral meeting in order to make the parameters of this ceasefire clear so that it can continue.
And the future of the strait still remains a question. NATO Chief Mark Rutte says he's speaking with leaders of NATO nations. What's the latest there?
We know that he met with President Trump yesterday, and he came out of that meeting saying effectively he understands that NATO needs to show in the coming days that they are willing to take action to help resecure the strait. He was clear to say it's not an ultimatum that the president is issuing, but there is a need for some kind of indication that they're going to help. The reality of the situation, though, is that quick action is going to be very difficult here. What we've heard from those other NATO countries is things like what we heard from Chancellor Merz of Germany, that a long-term ceasefire is going to be necessary before they get deeply involved in the strait and securing it. So I do think there's quite a uphill battle for getting NATO sign-off to help with that. But we will be seeing in the coming days if President Trump's able to apply enough pressure on those allies.
Before you go, First Lady Melania Trump made an announcement today denying any relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. What more do we know about the timing or context of her giving this address?
It caught many of us a little bit on surprise, Lindsay, and the reality is we don't know exactly what she was referring to. There are many references to Melania Trump in the Epstein files that were released earlier this year. Many of them are uncorroborated, so I don't want to put them out here now. And we know that last year there was some reporting about her associations with Epstein that was later pulled back from the organization that published those allegations. So we don't know exactly what was coming, but it certainly indicates that there was something fizzling up. Someone must have been asking about some other connection or allegations. One recent development on this is that a Washington Post reporter managed to get President Trump on the phone to ask about it, and he seemed a bit surprised by the topic of the press conference. So it doesn't seem like something that he was looped in on from the get-go.
Okay, Zach Hudak, thank you. CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd joins us now. Back to the question of Iran and the Strait. When it comes to the Strait, what are the long-term issues that need to be addressed during the negotiations in Pakistan?
Well, Lindsay, first let's start with the security-based considerations. At this time, it is not possible for a tanker to transit the Strait unless it gets approval from the Iranian regime, because the Iranian regime has laid a series of mines throughout the Strait, which would make transiting it, if they don't know the right way to go, very, very dangerous. At the same time, of course, Iranian regime members, as well as potentially proxies, continue to to fire aerial assets at tankers transiting through the Strait. So we have the security considerations to take into account. Second, and President Trump did just issue a Truth Social post on this, Iran reportedly is charging a toll for any tanker that wants to transit through the Strait. So at this time, any tanker, the shipping company has to contact the government of Iran, request safe passage, basically, and then issue a payment to the Iranian regime. President Trump did just issue this post indicating that that's not acceptable. So these negotiations have to focus on whether there's a fee that's charged, whether Iran is insisting on retaining control over who just gets to pass through, and then figuring out a way to make passage actually secure in the weeks, months, and years ahead.
If the president says something like Iran better not be charging fees to tankers in the Strait, I mean, the U.S. has the capability to gather intelligence and find out whether or not that is actually happening, right?
They certainly do, and it has been publicly reported that Iran is collecting a toll, so covert action may not even be necessary in this case, Lindsay. President Trump, of course, said that the ceasefire was contingent upon the Strait of Hormuz being open. It is not open, particularly as Iran is charging a toll, so perhaps he is professing that he doesn't know what's actually happening as he does try to save what is a very fragile ceasefire.
Sam Vinograd, thank you.
Thanks.
With Iran once again halting traffic through the Strait of Hormuz, international shipping is at a standstill. Our CBS News data team looked at marine traffic numbers to see the impact on crossings since the war began. So since it began on February 28th, an estimated 357 ships have crossed the Strait of Hormuz as of Wednesday. For comparison, before the war began, 138 ships passed every day, or around 5,500 over a 40-day period, according to Joint Maritime Information Center. 29% of the crossings since the war began happened only over 2 days, February 28th and March 1st. In March, only an average of 6 ships per day were able to cross. This month, the number has slightly ticked up to 11 ships. About 60% of the ships that have crossed are oil, chemical, and gas tankers, with about a fifth of all the world's oil moving through the Strait. Oil prices have climbed globally in response to the war. Prices dropped after the ceasefire was announced, but could rise again if the Strait remains restricted.